Good evening, everyone. My name is Monica Harris. I'm Executive Director of FAIR, and I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight for what I expect will be a profound and timely and necessary conversation. Tonight, we're going to talk about cancellation, but not in the abstract way we often discuss this phenomenon, not as a political talking point or a cultural buzzword. No, tonight we're examining what cancellation actually does to a human being, to the spirit, what it costs, the toll it takes, and what it destroys. We throw around this word cancel so casually now. Someone gets canceled and we move on to the next tidbit in the news cycle. But behind each of these stories is a person whose life has been shattered and fundamentally changed. Someone who hasn't just lost their career, but their community, their safety, their sense of belonging, and often their ability to do the things that gives their life the greatest meaning. My guest tonight knows this reality intimately. Mary McDonald Lewis is a 40-year veteran of the entertainment industry. For those of you who grew up in the 80s, like myself, you know her as the voice of Lady J from G.I. Joe. You've heard her as the voice of OnStar in millions of cars, whether you realize it or not. She's worked with Patrick Stewart, Robert Pattinson, David Tennant, and countless other stars as a dialect coach. She's a union board member, a theater director, a stage actor, and most importantly, a mother. She's an artist to her core. She's been canceled 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3. And not for committing a crime, not for harming anyone, but for simply refusing to affirm an ideology that she doesn't believe in. And her experience, our most recent experience of cancellation, has been captured in this week's Substack in an article titled "The Artist in Exile." So if you haven't read that, I invite you to do so after this webinar. So tonight, Mary's going to tell us her story, all of it. And then we're going to talk about what this means for us, even if we're not artists. Because what's happening to Mary isn't just happening to artists, teachers, doctors, journalists, and ordinary citizens across this country. It's happening to every human being. And we need to stop being merely angry about it. We need to be horrified by it. And then we need to find the courage to do something about it. So Mary, thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your willingness to share your story.
Monica, thank you, and thank you retroactively and looking ahead at the future for FAIR, for all it does, for all it's doing for all of us. This is truly a life-saving organization in so many ways. I have direct experience with it, and so do so many other artists and others that I'm intimately acquainted with, and we're grateful for you. And hello to everybody watching this evening. I'm so glad you joined us. And we're going to have time at the end of Monica and my conversation to hear your stories and your feelings and your experiences as well. So I look forward to hearing your questions and to responding to them at the end of the conversation.
Great. Thank you for that, Mary.
You bet.
Okay, so before we get into the more difficult parts of your story, I want our audience to first get a better understanding of who you are as an artist. You've had an extraordinary career spanning 4 decades, as I was just mentioning. Why don't you take us back to the beginning? Like, what drew you to the arts, and what has your work meant to you throughout your life?
Well, Monica, I think all of us, people I call my fellow travelers, you and the folks listening this evening and watching, all of us have something we can refer to as the before times, don't we? And it seems like it's shrouded in the fog of memory now. But looking back, I still consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world. I was one of those kids in class who was always being sent to the principal's office for talking too much and for fidgeting too much and for laughing too much and for cutting up way too much. And I was a mockingbird. I was the jibber jabber kid at the back of the class, and that led ultimately to my career as a voice actor. Yes, I did stage work. I appeared for the first time at 10 years old in theater directed by my mother. Actually, in my father's church. He was the minister of the First Unitarian Church in Sacramento, California at the time. And so I moved from 10 years old forward to moving to Los Angeles armed with my liberal arts degree and thought about what I wanted to do. And I knew that my voice was what mattered to me. in terms of my artistic format. More than anything else, I've done it all. As an AM field reporter, I covered the Rodney King riots. As an FM NPR morning anchor, I was steadfast at the microphone through thick and thin. I've worked as a copywriter, a speechwriter, a lot of different things. But more than anything else, it was speaking and working with words to carve out my understanding of this incredible mystery that we find ourselves within. And I got lucky. I got an agent and then another agent and then another agent. And I was booked first of all as Lois Lane on Super Friends. So I was Superman's erstwhile sidekick, and who secretly wondered if he might be Clark Kent, but was never quite sure. And went on to voice many other cartoon characters. In fact, to this day, I still attend Comic Cons and sign autographs, chiefly as Lady J, as you mentioned, a character I played on G.I. Joe as one of that show's co stars. And it is one of my greatest joys to go to Comic Cons and to meet the fans and to affirm that their childhood memories about this cartoon were indeed justified. As a voice of OnStar, I told millions of people where to go, which is a favorite thing of mine to do. And my love of directing, of course, took me to stage and to on screen, on camera work occasionally as well. But it was my work in theater as a dialect coach that first gave me joy, working with sounds, the shape of sounds in languages, accents, and dialects, and leading with love, leading my clients forward with love. And that included principally in addition to film television, but home in Portland, that included, of course, people who were also my friends. They made up my tribe, and I was their coach. So my job was to care for them, to keep them safe on stage as regards the dialect facet of what it was they were trying to do. And that, of course, brought me joy, and it brought them joy, and it brought all of us great reviews, specifically reviews as to the caliber of my dialect work. And I was Oregon's go-to dialect coach for stage. At the same time, I was working internationally as a dialect coach in film television. But it was my work in theater on stage that led to my first cancellation. Those were the before times when life was so simple and I was happy. And then I came face to face 2018, 2019 with that thing that so many others have come face to face with, and it led to the ruin of their careers. And more than anything else, as you so eloquently put it in your introduction, Monica, and thank you for that, for the framework, it led to the loss of the way in which I organize my cosmology. Because when you take away an artist's voice, in this case my literal voice, you take away their ability to make holy, to make sacred, to make sense of what they're doing on planet Earth. And that is the kind of soul murder that you and I are going to be talking about later on.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, let's with that in mind, and what drew you to the arts and why it became such a powerful part of your life. Maybe this is a good way to segue into what drew you to fair. How did you end up here?
Oh boy. I have this image of myself afloat in the wine dark sea, gasping for air and seeking help out there in the darkness. I knew of you beforehand, thank God. And I had been reading your artists' essays, and I'd been watching the work that you do in the broader sense, in the legal field, and taking a look at the medical field, and all of the ways in which you're impacting society in a positive way. And so thankfully I was aware of you guys. And I think it was probably Brent who reached out with an invitation to contribute my first essay. And that was the essay wherein I discussed the fact that I went from this happy-go-lucky, successful, passionate dialect coach to a person in a community who couldn't walk into a single room. First of all, who was booted out of every theater in Oregon, and who could no longer walk into any room, whether it was going to see a show at night, which I could no longer do safely, to say nothing of looking for work, to say nothing of no longer being invited to the parties or the dinners or the nights out at the bar, in my acting community. And I think sort of most the cruelest of all was to read what people were saying in social media and have your guts turned into knots reading these awful, awful declarations before you get inoculated, Monica. Before you get inoculated, and you say to yourself, Whew, it's just zeros and ones.
Mhm.
It's just zeros and ones. They wouldn't say it to your face in real life. And Monica, I still grapple with that every single day. When I see ugly things written about me, as I did today on X. No, was it on X? Yeah, it was on X. Someone posted, "We will shut you down wherever you are today."
Mhm.
And that sense of being hounded. And so, that first essay positioned me where I was in space at that time. I was a canceled artist.
Mhm.
There was nothing I could do about it, nothing. And that sense of helplessness, of course,
Mhm.
continues to eat away at you. You have lost your organizing framework. You've been shunned, so as a biomechanical being, you experience mortal danger. Your neurology doesn't distinguish between being canceled socially and being booted beyond the pale, which you and I talked about. The pale being the furthest line of the stockade. And if you're
Mhm.
put beyond the pale, Pale, the pale, then the bears are going to get you, or the wolves are
Mhm.
going to get you, aren't they? And so our bodies, our physical bodies, um, tighten and shrink and recede and get small and become afraid.
Mhm.
And what does it take then for each of us to reason with that unreasoning fear? Because there are real things that have happened. You have lost your community. That's a real thing. It's not made up.
Mhm.
People are damning you in social media or turning their back on you when you walk into, if you're fool enough to walk into a show, in my case. So these are real things, and they are absurd, which adds, of course, another angle to it. Because you know how when parents get divorced and little kids automatically think it's their fault?
Yes.
And it's because they have to make sense of something of the disintegration of their world. The volcano has exploded, big clouds coming across the sky, people are dropping dead. It's Pompeii.
Mhm.
A myth has to be invented about that to make sense of it because it's too awful otherwise.
Mhm.
Children invent that same myth. We canceled artists or canceled doctors or canceled biologists or canceled dancers fall prey to a myth, and that myth is it's our fault, that we're bad and wrong and don't deserve to live. And
Mhm.
so, Monica, I got small, and even helped by that first essay with Fair, I knew that I had to retract from my world. And so I got quiet until 4 years later I tried to mount a second play.
Mhm.
And that led to my second essay with Fair and my second cancellation.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned the first essay. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Mary wrote an essay last year for Fair Substack called "The Art Thieves: How My Voice Was Nearly Stolen," and that essay ended on a very hopeful note. You wrote about returning to your art. I think as a soldier
Yes.
returns to his fields,
Home
something
from
like
the
or
war.
that home from
Yeah.
war, home from the war. Yes, it was really poignant.
Thank you.
And at that time, last year, you were planning to stage a play called The Big Bets with your creative partner, and you thought you were coming home. So,
Yeah.
and that didn't quite happen as expected, which we'll get to. So let's rewind even a little bit further back. And I think what's really important, Mary, is that people, all of our viewers, have an understanding of the full timeline of what has happened to you. It's not a single incident, but it's a pattern of escalating attacks, I guess you'd say. Can you walk us through your very first cancellation?
Sure. The the woke tide was rising at Artist Repertory Theater in Portland, Oregon, and more meetings were being held about Black Lives Matter, about
Mhm,
um, uh, the institutional racism of theater. Uh, We See You, White American Theater was out with the demands that were being put out by that organization, demands for a therapist
mhm,
in any theater production that featured African American actors. Uh, there was rising conversations in my dialect coach community, which was institutionally captured immediately worldwide.
mhm,
Conversations about um, though I was the very first dialect coach in history to formalize and prepare teaching assets, learning assets to teach African American English, prior
mhm,
known prior as African American Vernacular English, known prior as Ebonics when it was first noticed and notated and understood, analyzed in Berkeley, California,
mhm,
and declared both a dialect and a language. And this was very important to me to create and institutionalize these materials. But at that time, at Artist Repertory Theater, what was happening in the dialect coach world was I was never going to be able to coach African American English again, despite being the formalizer
mhm,
of that. Um, Straight people couldn't coach gay characters, non trans dialect coaches couldn't coach people playing trans characters. So it's at the same
oh,
time that actors could not play trans characters who were not trans characters who were not trans. So it was all getting very formal and very
mhm,
legalistic.
mhm,
And then Artist Repertory Theater said that we had to declare our pronouns anytime we spoke and anytime we had written material about ourselves, because we were featured in the programs, weren't we? Our
mhm,
bios were featured in the programs. And I knew immediately it was wrong.
mhm,
I knew that it was compelled speech, and I knew that it was some kind of loyalty oath. And the artist and the citizen in me wasn't going to have it.
mhm,
Wasn't going to have it. I love the word patriot, and I like the notion of taking back the word patriot so that we really understand it in the way that it was intended. But I also really love the word citizen. I think it's such an exciting word. and and so I tend to use it a lot, kind of meaning both of those things at once. There was something wrong about having words forced in my mouth.
mhm,
It was a lie. And if you have fought hard your whole life, Monica, to overthrow expectations of what you are supposed to say,
mhm,
as a little kid who had to lie about bad things happening to them, for example.
mhm, mhm,
So they have to cover that up. And sadly, I have direct experience of that. It's very tragic and it's unfortunate. It happens to a lot of people. Um, as a young woman or older woman who's expected to say the right things. And fortunately, I was already getting old enough to where I was able to go, I don't think so.
mhm,
I got quiet. I didn't submit my pronouns, and I quietly did not say them in my public presentations about the dialect that we were using for whatever show I was coaching.
mhm,
And that lasted 2 shows. And they called me into the office and they invented a reason why they needed to fire me. They were very vague because they were avoiding, I'm sure, any kind of legal quicksand. I was smart enough to record the session, which I'm sure is against the law, but oh well. Um, and I, it was one of those when bad things happen to good people. I was blindsided It didn't make sense to me. There was a measure of absurdity to it. And I was, to use a very popular term, gaslit in terms of how did I go from being an excellent coach to a despicable human being?
Mm,
It made no sense.
mm.
So I walked out of the office, I walked to the lobby, I pulled my picture off the wall, which lives right up there now in my recording studio, and I never looked back. And I was a part of a resident artist group at Artist Repertory Theater, and virtually none of them reached out to me. None of them
Oh,
asked about me. And I had, again, referring back to my earlier work with them, I had cared for them. I had loved them and fought hard to keep them safe and solid on stage with their dialect work. I loved my colleagues. I loved them so much. And um, and so it was insult to injury, wasn't it? And then Artist Repertory Theater called the other equity house in town, and they did the exact same thing.
well, first of all, that's heartbreaking. But secondly, I'd like to give you some comfort legally that Oregon is a single party consent state, so it's okay for you to record someone without their knowledge. So I think you're in the
Oh,
clear legally there. Yeah, that's
very good.
yes, yes,
I won't expect a phone call after this
yes.
webinar is over.
Thank goodness. Yeah, I wanted to clear that up.
Thank you.
So this was in 2018, so this was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay,
2019, I think, is when they let me go.
then let you go. Okay, so you essentially lost your job for taking a position on a question of language and
All my
belief,
jobs, yeah.
right? So what happened after that? I believe there was a second cancellation.
Yes, I was quiet for a bunch of years because I was quiet in terms of my public profile in Portland. I was well and truly resoundingly hated, as evidenced by all of the horrible things people were saying on social media. And I had a friend keep screen grabs of all of those things for future reference, just in case. And one or two of these fellows has made it their life's goal to ensure that I never work again.
Oh,
This is their organizing framework. Byron Beck is one of them, and there's another fellow whose name, to my great shame, I keep forgetting. I'm sure he wishes I could remember his name, but I keep forgetting it. Um, and I came up with an idea to adapt. I still get scared saying the word because of our superstitions in theater, but I'm not in a theater, so I can say it. To adapt Macbeth, also known as the Scottish play, to adapt Macbeth to a long one act, an hour and 20 minutes, to take everybody out of the play who was inconsequential to what I wanted to take a look at, which was the
hmm.
relationship between Mackers and Lady Macbeth. Because Lady Macbeth is too often characterized as this shrike, this um, hoary, Hoary, there's that beautiful language again, this hoary crone, the human manifestation of the witches who bullies Mackers into killing good King Duncan. And I wanted to look at their love. I wanted to look at their ambition. I wanted to look at the passion that drove them forward. And I made all kinds of amazing discoveries as I was developing this play with my now former partner, including the fact that Lady Macbeth in real history, as we know, Shakespeare used history for his character creation for this play and for all of his tragedies, his royal stories. Um, Lady Macbeth had a greater claim to the throne than Duncan. Lady Macbeth and Macbeth himself were related to Duncan, as they were all, related back in back in the day. Um, in some cases, a little too related, but nevertheless, she had a greater claim to that throne than either Macbeth or Duncan. So is it any wonder she's as passionate and as ambitious and avaricious as she is? So I
Well, so
took this.
I'm sorry, Mary. Can I just ask, what about this very interesting retelling of Macbeth do you think triggered such backlash?
Nothing,
No, nothing, nothing about the story itself.
nothing.
Oh,
Not a thing.
interesting.
Not a
Okay.
thing. Nothing. Had nothing to do with the play. It had
So
to
what
do
was it
with
about?
it killing the artist, killing me.
It was just about you.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. They wish to prevent me from ever telling a story again.
Mm.
And I want to talk about what a blessing that is as we move along. So help me remember that between the two of us, maybe
Okay,
a
I'll
little
try to
bit.
help you remember that.
But yeah, they wanted to still my voice, to prevent me from ever speaking again. And if we look at kind of the notion and the beauty and the symmetry of all of this, I came into this world with a great passion for speaking and a great passion for expression.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what they wanted to rip from my throat.
Mhm.
So we were, my partner got involved. Everybody
Mhm.
loved the project. It's a fabulous project. At that time, it was a three-actor project with our third actor playing the
Self-funded.
role.
And
Self-funded,
self-funded, right?
self-funded.
Self-funded. That's important.
Absolutely. And it had a $15,000 budget. We were going to be pretty close to that budget. We might have gone up to 18, maybe 20 at the end, but by that
Okay.
time there would have been ticket sales. 15,000 bucks.
Oh, and you were
And
selling tickets?
yes, yeah. We
All
were
right.
already
Okay.
selling. We were 2 weeks from opening.
Oh,
So
fantastic. Okay.
we
All right.
already had a ticket agency selling tickets for us. Obviously, we had our theater. Our fights were
Mhm.
magnificent. Our fight choreographer had been in. My cast was just wonderful. And I was growing as Lady M because I was playing Lady Macbeth with my partner who was Mackers.
Mhm.
But little by little by little, that one fellow and that other fellow whose name I keep forgetting.
Joe, was it Joe Clay or Clyde
Yeah,
or
Joe Clee. Joe Clee.
Joe
Thank you for
Joe
that. Yeah,
Clay?
Joe Clee and Byron Beck. Yeah. Bless their hearts, bless their sad little hearts. It's so how unhappy they must be. How sad and unhappy they must be. It's a pity. It really is. It's a waste of a life. It's,
I want to interject just for the audience, for our viewers, what Joe Clay posted on Facebook, quote, I've heard the whispers for years, the silence needs to end, the disgusting comments need to stop. Mary McDonald Lewis's comments about trans people that should be are unacceptable and has been going on for too long. Boycott the show. So again, he's taking comments, his thoughts about you and
yeah,
your feelings about the transgender community, which you're certainly you are entitled to have your opinions, and he's entitled to have his
yeah,
opinions, but he's
yeah.
using that as a basis to boycott the show.
Yes, entirely, entirely. Yes. And my second essay details my stance on this, which is I adhere to biology, the Constitution, and federal law. Period. Period. And that all lives matter, of course, and that all of us must lead lives of dignity and respect, which is, of course, exactly what they are trying to take away from me. But that's the alpha and the omega of my feelings about that community and any community actually that you can name.
Sure.
My
Yeah.
father crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge with Martin Luther King. I
Mm.
was in Selma for the 50th anniversary of the crossing of the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I crossed the bridge in my father's memory. I met the people who sheltered him. He was in the lettuce fields with Cesar Chavez. This is mother's milk to
Mhm.
me. Not to put too fine a point on it, but it's mother's milk to me, right? This is where I live. So they behind the scenes,
Mhm.
these folks and their hobby of trying to take everything away from me again, and to affirm, and this is really important, to come back and affirm, no, Mary McDonald Lewis, you don't get to do this. Actually,
Mhm.
you don't get to tell stories. What are you doing? Who do you think you are? Did you not listen the first time?
Mhm.
We are, in fact, the boss of you. We're the boss of your life. They began pressuring my partner,
Mm.
my director, my the theater space. My partner, by the way, had already shared with me that he shared my beliefs, but he was never
Mhm.
going to say it in public. And
Of course.
ultimately, 13 days before opening, which for a theater is you're moving into tech week now. You're moving into what's going on with the lights, what's going on with the sound, what's where this blocking isn't working. We need to change this up. We need to sew the hem of that dress.
Hmm.
Ooh, it's an exciting, wonderful time, critical time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the artistic director of Milagro Theater in Portland, Oregon, called me up and said, "Good luck.
Oh,
Don't know where you're going to stage a play, but you're not going to stage it here." She had already told me in private conversations that
mm,
she was sympathetic to my stance and that she thought not about trans people, but just about having
sure,
a broader liberal viewpoint, classical liberal viewpoint.
sure.
She had already shared that she held with that. But in the end, in the space of hours, my partner had called me and said, "It's over. Close the accounts. I'm taking my money out, and you must post a public declaration like Martin Luther and his 99 Theses on the door of the Catholic Church. You must post a declaration distancing yourself from us,
Mm.
declaring that the company is dead and that you are no longer associated with me."
And you lost all the money you invested.
I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I was gone. Um, half of my investment was gone. I was able to pull half still out of the bank, thank God.
Mhm. And then came the
So,
doc thing, right? You were doxxed as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely doxed. Yes. And the threats, oh my God, the when you're canceled, you experience a set of emotions that are very predictable, and you
Mhm.
move through them much like the seven stages of grief. And the very
Sure.
first thing that happens is this abiding sense of shame.
Mhm.
It's like Poe's rats eating your innards. It's a terrible sense of shame. It's it's like in those families where there's a lot of enabling. If a child finally says, "No, my father is an alcoholic," if she says it to her pastor or someone at school or a Girl Scout leader, the first thing she feels is terrible, terrible shame
Mhm.
for telling the family secret. It's
Mhm.
that level of shame. It's something you've done. You've committed a sin.
Right.
It's sinful. It reaches that height. It's a mortal sin. Now the body doesn't distinguish. Is it rational? Is it reasonable? No,
Mhm.
not at all. But the body is doing its work, and so is the brain, not the mind, but the brain. And
So,
then, yeah,
well, I'm sorry. I just want to, before I wanted to make sure we got into the other portions of your journey and your experience.
sure, of
Um,
course.
you
You be
after
my
after
guide.
this. Okay. Well, after this experience, you fled Portland and you traveled 3,000 miles across the country to start over, right? In your career
I
personally,
did.
in North Carolina or South? Was it North Carolina?
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
It took me after 32 years in Portland, Oregon, it took me 70 days to be pulling up to my new home. I made the
Oh,
decision practically overnight. Boom, boom, boom. Because
okay. Sometimes it's
I was on the run for my life. They were threatening to put posters with my name and address on them all over town.
sure. No, I mean, it makes sense that you leave, but the what I think is fascinating, and it blows my mind, is that you moved 3,000 miles away to escape what had been haunting you, but the
Yeah,
mob followed you.
it didn't work.
And
It,
to tell, why didn't you just quickly tell us
very
how that played
quickly.
out?
Indeed, I
Yeah,
will.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, sure.
A dear, dear friend of mine who lives very, very nearby, and
Mhm.
uh, um, he thought it might be nice to start a staged reading company, readers theater company here in town. And I
Mhm.
had had one of my own in Portland for about 20 seasons. And I thought that was going to be a great idea to meet the community and tell some stories and settle into my new home. And so we very nearly got it set up.
Mhm.
And we were within days of opening. But an actor had written me asking, expressing some interest in auditioning. And
Mhm.
he had they them pronouns, and I wrote him back and said, "Yeah, I'd love to have you, and here are the scripts, and just to let you know, I used standard pronouns on my stage."
Mhm.
That was the end of that.
Wow.
And he jumped online and he did research and he found a couple of articles that had been written by the left wing free newspaper in Portland, Oregon. That been a huge headline before I left in this left wing left wing newspaper about theater, Milagro Theater cancels show over stars, transgender remarks.
Oh my
Star
God.
in Portland, Oregon. Oh my God. I'm ready for my close up, Mr. DeMille. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Okay.
But, but, you know, they, they, it just caught fire and they connected with the Portland mob. And then it was chapter and verse. The same, and my third essay includes um, remarks by the local community here about what an awful, awful, awful person I am. And that's when, because it was my third cancellation, when it it was really driven home to me that I may never produce theater again. Um, and that's when I began to feel suicidal, genuinely, deeply, profoundly suicidal. And I felt as though I needed to let my daughter know and her
Mhm.
beautiful husband. And I began thinking of ways to do it because when an artist has their organizing framework, their faith, taken from them, it is like taking someone's faith. It's like telling a Jew they may never have Shabbat ever again. Never. Never again will you give thanks on a Friday and say the blessing over the candles. Never again
Well,
as a Christian can you celebrate Christmas. Never.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned this concept of suicide because it plays into what you had written about and what we talked about earlier privately, which is this concept of soul murder.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means and what it looks like in practice? What are the signs?
You know, I was glad to be canceled a third time because three is a sacred number.
Hmm.
It's, fairy tales are always have, three phases and so forth. And with this third cancellation, I was brought to this very dark place and invited to move in one direction or the other.
Hmm.
And as I grappled with it and reached out to you again at Fair, and reached out to Brent Morden again at Fair, and was introduced to Albert Murray, my new hero. Everybody read Albert Murray, please. Um, this was my life raft. I was able to reach over the side of that raft on that wine dark sea and pull myself back in through the process of writing an essay to all of the people who read the kinds of work that Fair produces.
Hmm.
And in researching that essay and going from, wanting to end things because life had ceased to have meaning, I really got to be in touch finally, Monica, with what a savage thing cancellation is and how real, how tribally and biomechanically and morally savage and primitive cancellation is.
Hmm.
And and its brutality is so eloquently expressed through this notion of soul murder.
Hmm.
We see it in Saxon law going all
Hmm.
the way back that far. I think it was the 1400s. I may be wrong, but I might not be. Um, we see it in Saxon law, and then we see it, ironically and beautifully, in theater. We see it with Ibsen and Strindberg, who talk about
The crucible.
soul murder being that loss of the joy of living,
Hmm. Hmm.
and what a terrible, terrible crime it is. And then later it moved into an analysis of what is done to children who experience sexual abuse and how it robs us of joy and a willingness to be full participants in living. And it is a high crime because you're still walking around, you're still walking around. But what are you doing as you walk
Hmm.
around?
Sure.
Are you drinking too much? Are you driving too fast? Are you scrapping with your mate such that divorce is back on the table? How
Hmm.
is this notion of having your soul murdered impacting the rest of your life? And this is what they do. This is their
You
goal.
mentioned we have of course, yes. Just a comment from or a question from one of our viewers. You mentioned Albert Murray, and you are referring to the Black novelist, are you not?
I'm referring to Albert Murray, who is a novelist, but he's also a music and literary critic, and a writer himself of on many many different levels. He's an essayist as well as a novelist. Best friends with Ralph Ellison, and a huge fan of Duke Ellington,
Cool.
and
So,
more.
yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to call out the fact that he's Black. I think that's irrelevant. I was just literally reading from the
Sure.
comment here, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
um so so as I'm wrapping my head around this, so with cancellation, we're really talking about something that's an ancient practice. Cancellation is shunning, and shunning has existed in human societies for millennia, in tribal contexts and religious communities. It was the ultimate
Cults
punishment
as
for,
well.
yes, right. It's the ultimate punishment, just short of death. And you sort of you tapped into this with you were getting into this with the Saxon practice.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit more about how shunning was used to enforce conformity, which is what we're seeing a lot now, this pressure to
Yes.
conform?
And isn't it interesting, and isn't it important, I think, that that we revert to that word, shunning,
Mhm, mhm.
because we understand what that means all too well. Some churches and all cults practice shunning. So does Amway. So does polygamist sects in Utah and elsewhere. You said that this is a practice that is as old as mankind. Absolutely. I think the moment we had a cave, we were threatening to put people outside the cave
Very true.
in an
Very true.
instant. In an instant. We are here, you're going there if you don't
That's
mind your
right.
manners. And that threat has moved from being mortal, though I think it is mortal still to this very day, and in what it does, and what if I had acted on those suicidal impulses, or any one of a number of the other people who I've spoken with, artists who've said I thought about killing myself, and it's certainly more than one. Um, Shunning, placing someone beyond the pale, strips them of strips a person of everything, and I really like what you said. It's just short of death,
Mhm,
but you have to live with it, don't you?
mhm,
And that means that it is torment. It's a form of torture to be alone. Look at being placed in isolation,
mhm,
and that is now being considered torture. We're now
mhm,
taking a really close look at isolation. Um, the human body starts to shut down. It first turns in on itself and attacks itself as the perpetrator of the crime, the reason that you're alone. It's your fault.
mhm,
And so your own sense of reason and understanding of the way the world bolts together starts to fail, and you become profoundly afraid.
mhm,
And so, therefore, you have two choices: remain in that terrified state or capitulate.
mhm,
So, shunning becomes about two things: driving you to obey, driving you to obedience, in which case you may rejoin the tribe,
mhm,
or driving you out into the wilderness to be eaten by the
mhm.
bears. And how many people in this world today, in America today, in Great Britain today, in Australia today, in Ireland, elsewhere, have been driven to obedience? And what must we do to stem that tide?
Yeah, I mean, what's happening in the UK is particularly just alarming. It just people are being arrested for social media posts that just really express support for Christianity
Yeah.
or just question anything relating to like the Muslim faith or transgender practices or I should say ideology. It's frightening what happens when you don't have a First Amendment.
Yeah.
Now, so again, we have about 12 minutes left. And I
And
wanted
if
to make
there's
sure.
questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah, we actually have a lengthy comment. Oh, you know what? Uh, Mary, now I have. I'm just going to read a couple of comments and you can
Sure.
sort of respond as you want. One viewer says, "Thank you for your eloquent and heartfelt story, Mary. What troubles me so deeply is that so many of the world's great traditions, religious and artistic alike, are built around the possibility of transformation, forgiveness, redemption, and renewal of the human spirit. Good points. This ideology offers none of that. It leaves no room for grace, only the slow destruction of the soul, as you so aptly described. Noel Coward's words come to mind here. The theater is meant to be a house of strange enchantment, a temple of dreams.
Mm.
When it's reduced to a mere soapbox for political propaganda, it loses that redemptive power, just as surely as any belief system that abandons forgiveness forfeits its claim to serve the human spirit at all. Incredibly eloquent. Thank you very much
Lovely, lovely.
for that. Yes,
Is
Tiffany.
is any one thing life affirming or death affirming?
Mm,
Marxism is death affirming. There's no question about it. It comes in as a parasite, it engages in institutional capture, and it kills the
mhm,
host.
mhm, mhm. So, another comment. Greetings from Scotland. Hey, Scottish
Oh,
viewers.
oh, Scotland!
Scotland. As Mary
Scotland.
knows, um, I have swum these murky waters here in the performing live poetry world. This is from someone it sounds like you'll know her. Her first name is Jenny. She has many
Yes,
parallel
yes.
experiences, including leaving her own home, her then home of city of Edinburgh in 2020, and the destruction of her reasons for getting out of bed in the morning for some time. It's brutal to get through, and I just want you to first applaud Mary for her eloquence this evening. So just giving you a lot of support from Scotland, someone who can really relate to your experience because they've experienced something similar.
Jenny is the author of the book Hounded, and it is an articulation of what happens to gender critical women. And I relied upon her, Jenny Lindsay, and I relied on her a great deal for my second essay. I owe a great debt of gratitude to Jenny. I'm so glad she wrote in.
Oh, we're so thankful that Jenny's watching tonight and can
Me
contribute.
too.
Thank you, Jenny. So as we move towards the end of this event tonight, I wanted to talk about a call to action. Um, you've said something earlier that really resonated with me. We shouldn't just be mad about what's happening, we should be horrified. Now, can you expand on that?
Yes, I referred to it earlier in this notion of the brutality and the savagery. It took me three cancellations. I'm kind of a knucklehead that way. It took me three cancellations to stop being just a soldier,
Mhm,
and to, pull my boots on and to just walk forward. And I feel so blessed, as I told you, I wanted to circle back to this.
mhm,
I
mhm,
feel so blessed to have had everything taken away from me. I'm not suicidal anymore. I'm not going to die because of this. I'm going to live because of this.
mhm,
And I had everything taken away from me so that I could be given something else.
mhm,
And that is an opportunity to talk about exactly what this is, and to urge all of us forward in ways that we can put it to rest, We should be horrified at what's being done. Yes, I'm one face of this, and that's and to be able to speak on behalf of myself and others to whom this is happening every day on a daily basis
mhm,
is an absolute gift, and I thank you again for that opportunity. But it needs to be society wide. We need to have a citizen army to fight this horror. And I would propose to you, Monica, that
mhm,
the way forward, I know it's scary. I do. I know it's scary, and no one knows the cost more than me and my fellow travelers, many of whom are watching this evening, I'm sure. And my heart goes out to each and every one of you who have suffered harm at the hands of this parasitic cancer on our society. I think that the way that to start in the face of
mhm,
the fear and in the face of how frightening all of this is and in the face of the potential cost
mhm,
is to be, I call it, little b brave. And I love the
mhm,
fact that it's got the verb to be right in there, doesn't
mhm,
it?
mhm,
Start by being little b brave. So what can that mean? Maybe it's a small conversation with the mothers when you're picking up your kids, listening
Mm,
for cues to find fellow travelers.
mhm,
It is certainly attending a school board meeting. Uh, Certainly, it's finding local organizations. It could be a Republican get out the vote. If you're not a Republican, maybe it's a Democratic get out the vote, but find fellow
mhm,
travelers.
mhm.
Um, Little be brave, small steps, but we must move toward being big B brave. And I can tell you this, I'll be with you, and so will Fair, and so will Monica and Brent and Reed and Gavin and everybody else in the organization. We must move forward together. We have to be an army. That's what I'm here today to talk with you about, really, at the end of it all, is the
Uh,
fact that this savagery cannot continue. If we take if we take the organizing framework away from the artists, if we take artists' voices, or if we take Rosie Kay's dance away from her, or Jody Shaw's teaching and her musical performance away from her, then what do we lose as a society? We fall mute.
mhm,
We fall entirely mute.
mhm.
And then we know what happens. Other people begin writing stories that don't have happy endings. Albert Maurice talks about that, by the way, in the essay that I quote in my essay. So I hope you'll give that a read.
Wonderful. So before we wrap up, just a couple of comments and one final question. Comments. Thank you for sharing your story and not giving up your voice to the authoritarian, anti-moral mob. That takes great courage, and I am inspired by hearing your story. Thank you again.
Thanks.
And from another viewer, just stating how sad that our First Amendment isn't protecting us against this phenomenon. I know and support and praise Mary to all ends. Um, and a couple of quick questions,
Sure.
if you want answering. Some artists, like some dramatic artists, like Kevin Ray, have bucked the mob, and we represented Kevin A. and helped him buck. The Daily Wire produces independent art. Does this offer you hope in this climate?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely. In fact, I have reached out to Daily Wire. I've reached out to Rob Schneider.
Yeah.
Graham Linehan is a fellow traveler as well. Oh, Clifton Duncan. Praise God for Clifton Duncan. I've reached out to all of these people. I need to be the dialect coach for Angel Studios. If anybody knows anybody at Angel Studios, help a sister out. It does provide hope. I think that Matt Walsh is producing amazing things, and I want to see more, more,
Yes.
more in that regard.
Cool. Um, one other question. How do we wake up those who have been canceled and don't understand? Our school annual meetings cancel anyone who has a valid question. People shrink back and lick their wounds, and I assume do nothing. When I stand and speak to the truth, I am like a kamikaze plot pilot. Boy, good for you.
Yes.
The
Yes,
kamikazes.
indeed. Well, I think one thing that we do is my motto as a dialect coach, and anytime I need to get a horse into a horse trailer, you gotta love them forward. You gotta
Oh,
love them forward.
I like that.
You gotta provide comfort and succor and sanctuary and good food and hope, hope, hope. And fair provides hope, doesn't it? It really
Yes,
does.
that's
Yeah.
what we aim to do.
Yeah. Be a
Uh,
friend. Be a friend to all is my advice there.
Wonderful. Yes, and a final comment we have, appreciate your vulnerability and willingness to share from your heart, Mary. I believe it will touch many hurting people. And I
Oh,
couldn't
I
agree
hope
more with
so.
that.
I
Yeah.
hope so. And for that just brings me to tears. That really touches me because I don't want anybody to be as sad and as scared as I have been in the past and as terrified. I want us all, when we go through it, as some of us will have to as this fight goes on, and that's okay. That's okay. We have to face that. But if I could put my arms around you and take it all away for every single one of you and take it on myself, I would. But because I know I can't, I want all of us to know in advance that it's going to come, and that when it does, it's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. In actual fact, you are doing the good work. You're doing the good work as a citizen of this great country.
Mhm.
And even if it feels bad at the time, don't let that be the marker of understanding of what it is you're doing. Talk to your friends, reach out, travel with your fellow travelers, and know that you're doing the work that needs to be done. You're doing the work for the future, and it's worth it. It's so worth it.
Well, thank you so much. Um, well, I like to thank you tonight for joining us tonight, Mary.
Thank
And
you, Monica.
I'd also like to thank all of you in our audience for your thoughtful questions, for just showing up and supporting Mary,
Yeah.
and for your commitment to freedom and integrity in the arts.
And don't
And
forget, let's
yeah,
thank David for running the show
let's
off
thank Dave
camera
for running
here.
the show. Yeah.
We appreciate you, David. Thank you, Monica, so very much. I look forward to our continued association. I've got some ideas about what I want to talk about moving forward, and I'm always a voice for you and for anyone else who needs a voice who's listening this evening. Please do call
Thank
upon me
you.
if I could be of service.
And if Mary's story has moved you, I just want to remind you all that we can't do this good work without your assistance and your support. We exist entirely on goodwill. We're able to operate solely on the basis of donations from curious and interested people like all of you attending tonight. So again, if Mary's story has moved you, if you want to, please feel free to support her and her work in our mission to combat this kind of intolerance. And you can find the donate link in the chat. I'm sure Dave will be more than happy to drop it in there. And also want to remind you that in January, coming up in like the next few weeks, Fair in the Arts will be hosting a meetup in one of its regular community meetups. And it's open to all, but especially our Fair in the Arts members. But you can anyone's open to is welcome to show up, and we invite you to join us then. And so look for news about that in our newsletter in the coming weeks. So thank you again, Mary. Thank you everyone for showing up tonight.
Welcome.
Have a wonderful holiday season. Be
Yes,
good to
indeed.
each other, be good to yourselves, and most of all, be brave.
Be brave. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.